Welcome back to Season 5 of Comic Book Nation, the only show that does it all for geek culture and the official podcast of comicbook.com. I am your host, Kofi Outlaw, and we are finally back in the studio.
Hey!
I'm back here with my co-host, Matthew Aguilar.
What up?
And at the home studio, we have our other regular co-host, Janelle Wheeler.
Hello, everybody.
And joining us today, I think for the first time since maybe Season 1. It's been way too long. He used to be a Season 1 regular when we were all in the studio. Then COVID spread us all to the wind. But we're bringing him back today because we need his expertise. This is one of our secret weapons in the comic book bullpen. You don't hear him much because he doesn't want to deal with your noise. But Jamie Lovett here. He's one of our experts. I mean, he does everything. He does comic books. He knows everything about Star Trek. He knows a lot about Star Wars. Everything from Lord of the Rings. I mean, he's like one of our major jack of all trades, and he's one of our weekend editors. But Jamie Lovett's on the show today. Welcome back, man. Sorry it's been so long since we had you here.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be back, and I enjoy that you immediately turn the fans against me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the kind of show we are here. This is not like a supportive show like our Phase Zero cousin. We came out of the grueling days of comic books, Walking Dead years, and that's just kind of where we stuck.
Also, that needs to be your new Twitter bio. Doesn't want to hear your noise.
I mean, yeah.
First thing I'm going to do after this show.
Yeah,
but they're very accurate. But Jamie drops a lot of knowledge and he pieces out and he's like, I don't want to hear you. All the noise from the internet. Yeah, I'm not dealing with that.
Smart.
But Jamie's got to be here today because we have this unique week in fandom. We have finales for both Star Trek Picard and The Mandalorian. We have a whole new Evil Dead movie coming out. We got some, I mean, Jamie was on the desk when I think Wednesday, when we just kept getting hit with like news after news after news after news in the face. We were just like, for an hour there, it was like it stormed on us with news. So we're going to talk about some of that. And we're going to get into a heavy debate topic. I thought we'd be able to let this one pass and just kind of like, keep our heads down on this one. But we got to talk about Marvel and what's happening with its big bad who's turning out maybe to be a big bad in real life. So we're going to get into all that. I've also decided we're going to maybe let people know at the beginning of the show how this is going to flow, so in case you want to jump. I think everything we do is about like 10 minutes, maybe 15 tops.
Yeah.
So if you guys ever want a timestamp, the order today, we're going to talk about the Mandalorian finale, the Twilight TV series. Then we're going to debate if we need to recast Jonathon Majors as Kang. We'll have an ad break. We'll come back. We're going to do Evil Dead Rise reviews, Star Trek Picard finale reviews, and talking about the future. Matt's going to murk out on some Power Rangers. And for this week, it's going to be nice and simple this week for comics, where you're going to talk about the latest, I almost said issue of the new Superman series, which, we had a great time talking with Joshua Williamson and Jamal Campbell when they came on the show. So we're going to tell you about how that series is going. All right. So there's your timestamps. Let's jump back up to the top, right with the Mandalorian finale. All right, so the Mandalorian season 3 finale is here, and I've had I was also doing my Naughty Boy podcast, Podcast X last night, and where I work out a lot of the stuff. I got to get a lot of the angst out so I can present, the cleaner picture on this, hopefully award-winning Comic Book Nation podcast show. So as I was talking about this last night, I said, the Mandalorian finale for me, it was okay. It was a show. It had people in it, and the people did the things we all thought they were going to do. And, we had this real nice kind of tight ending. We're going to talk spoilers because it's been a few days. But, I think for me, the conversation now has grown larger than just this finale and the kind of nitpicks of it. For me, this is kind of a crazy week, and I'm in a kind of a weird headspace because I feel like I'm having this existential crisis about like, what is geekdom? What is fandom anymore? Because there's this weird week where the Mandalorian finale was okay, but like the Picard finale was so epic, and we're going to get into the Picard finale later in the show, but it was so good. And I felt this season of Star Trek Picard was so good and so epic, but has such a muted public kind of reaction and response compared to the Mandalorian that it's almost like a little crazy about like, what are we geeking out about? And like, what is thrilling us? And all of that is kind of messing with my head, but that's just me. I know you guys are probably much more like not as, crazy about this and all. So how are you guys feeling about this finale? Matt and Janelle, I mean, you guys are really, I like talking to you guys because you guys are not incredibly hardcore Star Wars heads like me, or say Jamie, you guys like the mainstream appeal of something like The Mandalorian. So how was this finale for you?
Janelle, why don't you jump in first?
Yeah, I thought this was super rewarding. Tons of action, spectacle, very tender moments and resolution with Grogu and like, his relationship with Mando. The special effects were really, really cool. Like it was all very satisfying. And now I'm wondering what the heck this season finale of Picard was like, because if it was better than this, I'm like, dang, I need to watch this. Because I think the only reason why you are having this problem, Kofi, is people just aren't watching Star Trek as much. It's not as mainstream, and casual viewers aren't just picking it up. Like, for example, I don't watch anything Star Trek related because it's so overwhelming, the thought of starting. I don't even know where the heck to start. As someone who's never watched anything Star Trek, I'm so overwhelmed by it and everyone's like, you gotta watch Picard. It's so good. I'm like, do I need to watch anything else? Like, it just feels really tedious. It feels like trying to tell someone to start Doctor Who. Like, it just feels like a lot. So, but now you have me super intrigued because I loved this episode.
Well, I mean, to that point, yes, you have to watch everything for Picard's final season, kind of. We'll get into that when we get to that segment. But no, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I mean, and I think, like, I want to be clear. I think this finale was good in just by the numbers. You know what I mean? Like, It wasn't like and weirdly, this season as a whole was kind of by the numbers. It's like none of our fan theories kind of panned out. And I know that's always a weird thing to do because that's subjective. We came up with those delusions, but like they didn't make us. But it's just like, I think people were just struggling to reach for like a level of twist or intrigue or something. And this was just like the standard, like, yeah, good guys versus bad guys, good guys win, and all's well that ends well. And I think what I've said to kind of level myself out is I just compare it to other Star Wars TV finales. And I feel like this one is just on the lower end for me. I think it's below Mandalorian Season 2 finale, Mandalorian Season 1 finale, Obi-Wan finale, Andor finale, certainly Bad Batch Season 2 finale. Like, I mean, I think all of those were better finales than this. And I
will say, like, I'm not curious. Like, I if they were like, this is the end of the show, like this is the actual show finale, I'd be like, okay, like I feel good about this. Like, they're gonna go live in a little hut and then go do adventures. And Bo-Katan is going to hang out with her Mando squad and like grow the population and make it awesome. And here's the end of that. And so you're right. Like, there is no cliffhanger. There's no like intrigue, like, oh my God, what's going to happen in the next season? But I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think it was funny. I was watching this and I was thinking of this conversation that was going to happen as I was doing it. I was like, okay, like, it's funny. You know me, I'm already one that doesn't like jump into Reddit threads and like, oh my God, this thing, because it's just setting yourself up for disappointment. It's the same way with armchair booking in wrestling. Me and Connor do that stuff all the time of, oh my God, what could this happen? And what's probably going to happen is something that's, it's something that's not that, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, when you get yourself hyped up for what could be and go so far down that it's what we talked about with WandaVision. WandaVision is a huge example of this. Like, that show consistently, like, I'm still waiting for Mephisto to show up. You know what I'm saying? Like, that, all that stuff happened. So for this, it was like the Royal Rumble to me, where coming into the Royal Rumble, Rhea Ripley and Cody Rhodes were the two people that everyone thought would win. It was also the two people that everyone wanted to win. And it was the people that everyone thought, oh, well, this is actually good for everything else. Like, yes, it's a surprise gets you in the moment, a twist gets you in the moment, but it's not necessarily as satisfying to the like overall thing, right? And for this, you're right. Like, there was no big spy twist of like, oh my God, it's this person and this. And I know some people were waiting for that. It's no like, oh, there's the big thing at the end, like obviously like the mythosaur and stuff and that long-term thing. But like, there wasn't anything that will just like have me going, oh my God, season 4 needs to be here tomorrow. That said, I adored this finale. Like, through the whole thing, I was sitting there, my boy's all growing up in front of my eyes.
It's so cute. Matt,
I
love
marked out
this.
so hard during those battles and during
Yes,
all this scene.
I
and,
thought
like-
of you. I did. And also shout outs to you getting wrestling in this conversation and me
There
getting
you go,
Doctor
yeah.
Who into this
I
conversation.
mean, I'm just saying we cover all bases, right? We're the hub, man.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
the hub. So I agree with you that there wasn't that big thing that people walk away from, like, oh my God, like this is what I'm talking about. However, I was really satisfied with the story, and I was actually surprised that they buttoned it up so much. I thought there would be like one thing, but it didn't take away from my enjoyment, and I'm totally cool with, like, you know, next season, like he's gonna be the apprentice. We got to move forward with his own journey, and now Mando needs to go with him. Like, it's all set up there. The only disappointment I had was the battle between Bo and Moff, because for whatever reason I thought, like, I don't know if it was time or what. I don't know. I just thought that fight was going to be more thrilling, and it wasn't, because I just kept like, why is Bo getting owned so much? Like, I don't know. I understood like the armor and things like that, but like I was waiting for that. That didn't quite pay off like I wanted it to. But when Mando comes in and then you get the three of them, that kind of took away some of that. So yeah, I loved it, but I've also been on that bandwagon all season. So
Jamie, what'd you think, man?
So I think this whole season of The Mandalorian was like, it was B grade Star Wars. It was fine. It wasn't the best Star Wars ever. I do have certain problems. Like, they blew past a lot of really big plot points really fast. Like, the Mandalorians have land on Navarro now, and they're leaving to go to Mandalore immediately. You know, Gideon has a bunch of clones, and they're all dead now immediately. Like, just blow past that stuff. But I think, for me, I think the problem was less what it was and more what the expectations were. Like, this is the show I thought The Mandalorian was going to be when they said they were making a show called The Mandalorian. What we got the first two seasons was just like Star Wars, the TV show. They had Jedi in it. They had the Empire. They had all this crazy stuff. And then this show, it feels lesser because they scaled down the focus to actually be about Mandalore and the Mandalorians. And so I don't think it's bad. It just feels smaller than what we have come to expect from the Mandalorian. And then all the stuff like the trying to get you excited about things seems to be getting you excited for different shows, like the whole Shadow Council thing in the previous episode and teasing more Thrawn. That was all like, come watch Ahsoka and get ready for that movie Dave Filoni is waiting on, more than can't you just wait for the next season of The Mandalorian. I think that's part of them shifting towards the shared TV universe thing, which they build, when they first announced all this stuff. And I think some of the wonkiness of this season is also them compensating for the fact that one of those shows, Rangers of the New Republic, got squashed like immediately, and they had to kind of course correct. I think that's why.
Oh no,
Jamie froze, but I think he's trying to say that that's why you had these plots.
Got that stuff
like,
there he goes.
Yep. Oh, there he goes.
Oh God, did I die?
Yeah,
You just froze for a split second there. You were saying that's why you're dropping some good knowledge, and then you froze.
Oh yeah, I think that's why we got the stuff in Coruscant, is because that Rangers of the New Republic show got squashed, and so they had to make up time, find a place to put the necessary story, and that was this season. So it's all a little them finding their footing again after having to course correct, I think, anyway.
Yeah, and I think that, I'm a big proponent ever since I saw Lost that season 3 is where modern shows tend to get wonky. They tend to, every season 3 tends to be kind of weak, than the first two. The sophomore slump isn't a really thing because people have got so nervous about that. They had big season 2 things, but then by season 3, it's like a show is popular. It's kind of feeding off its own popularity. It doesn't know how to keep the original sauce of originality and novelty. And I think that was this. And I know behind the scenes, I think everybody was just distracted. Pedro Pascal was making like a couple shows. He's running around with a stunt double in his armor like a lot of the time. Filoni's distracted. He's doing Ahsoka. Like, everybody was doing other stuff. And they were kind of like trying to, like Jamie said, then the Rangers of the New Republic got kind of scrapped, and you could see the bits and pieces of that. And so I think this one was this was like the audible pivot season where they were like, okay, well, we can tell this big story, but we can only do it in certain kind of ways. And you had these weird pacing things where you had, like, I think that for me now, like the Jack Black Lizzo stuff, which I didn't mind in the moment, but in the overall season, I'm like, as valuable as time seems to have been in this season, did we really need that? And it's just like other weird asides, like the guy who was like the scary robot guy who was bleeding Mando, like, and all that stuff, and just under there. And it's just like all of these things I think could have been tighter in a much more focused story than some of these episodic asides, because it was like they couldn't make up their mind if we wanted to be old Mandalorian or this new, more serialized, focused storyline for this season. But I'm not going to nitpick, because overall, like Jamie said, it's still B level Star Wars TV is still entertaining enough. It's not like some of the other more problematic shows and adaptations we got out there. So I'm good, and I think it's a fresh start, and I'm excited, and I want next season to go back to kind of the original flavor, where it's more of like the Western episodic like combination
100%,
where it's like, okay, every week we can do something different and play with the format of where we're going and how we uncover like Imperial remnants, where it might be hiding, what it might be masking as. There's a lot of great themes you can do with that, and fascism hiding in plain sight and all that stuff. But it's also building slowly but not heavy-handedly towards the larger event film, and Mando putting together whatever Thrawn and the Shadow Council are doing piece by little piece and stuff like that. So I hope it's a balance of both next season. So I'm hopeful for it. So that's all. All right. And unless we have anything else to add there, let's talk about the thing that I had Matt and Connor murking out about this today, but Connor isn't here today. So Matt, take it away. I mean, you got the thrill of a lifetime. There's a Twilight TV series happening, buddy.
Okay, so here's my thing. Am I like the big Twilight person?
No, I'm just
I was really into Twilight. I
Wait,
was
what?
Really into Twilight. When I was on American Idol, they asked me who is my celebrity crush. I said Robert Pattinson. Like,
oh my God.
I was like an early young adult sitting in my cubicle with my first job, ignoring my clients and reading Twilight.
I'm loving this. I had no idea that Janelle Wheeler.
Now, to your credit, I am a by proxy fan, because Anissa is like Janelle. Like Anissa is like hardcore.
I'm not anymore.
Yeah, but she's the same. Yeah, she's the same. She had all.
Trying to read. What is the one that came out from Edward's perspective? Another book came out. It was telling the entire story all over again via Edward's perspective. I am currently reading that right now, just because I've had it sitting on my shelf for like 5 years, and I'm like, I have to read something at night before I go to bed, and this is so boring that I can like pass out when I read this. I'm trying not to do screen time at night. And let me tell you, it is so juvenile now that I am, going on 40. I'm like, oh my God.
When the movies were coming out, it was actually when what was the last, I think it was either the last movie came out after we had started, like we were together, but like, she was like, hey, I'm a huge Twilight fan and stuff, but like, do you want to watch the Twilight stuff? And I was like, look, you watch a bunch of my crap. Like, yes, obviously I'm going to but one of our first like big dates was her going to Free Comic Book Day at the comic store with me. Okay. So like, I was like, more than yes, I will try out anything you want. Right. So, but she's like, you can't watch them all though. Like, I'm only going to allow you to watch certain ones. So like, she was like, you can watch the first one. Don't watch like New Moon and this, and she went through the whole thing, and then I can only watch certain ones. And I saw the last one in the theater, and I marked out a little bit because there's like an awesome fight scene in the final movie.
Fake-ass fight scene.
That was bothered me so much. I was like, no, that was so cool. Can't be in someone's mind. Anyway, I was very upset. So I'm actually excited about this, but I am interested to know like more details. Like I actually do want to know. Are they going to? I mean, obviously, this is a reboot, right? It's a rebooted cast, all that stuff.
Basically, are they going to Team Wolf Riverdale this, or are they going to do like a straight up remake? Is the question we're all asking.
It's like, are you going to do that? But I am interested, and we will probably watch it.
Listen, I'm going to keep my thoughts on this very short by just kind of quoting a tweet I retweeted from a man named @Daniel Kraus. It said, "It's nakedly pitiful to redo Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and Twilight." And it's just like, yeah, there's something kind of exhausting. We're in this time where all of these are now TV series happening at the same, like they're planning and development or out at the same time. And it's just like,
yeah, but this is cyclical.
I mean,
we've
5 years
reached-
ago, we were talking about this with
well,
movies.
it's just funny because I mean, I started my career here like in the 2010s, and so like my first job, like my first real kind of big parts of doing this job was having to go out and see like those final Twilight films, Breaking Dawn 1 and 2,
Yeah.
having to see the Deathly Hallows 1 and 2, and having to go to like the studios and see these and be like, oh my God, all right, like here we go. But here we go again. And I know the fans will be happy. You know, we're going back
I'm
to Sparkle
Vampire Diaries. I like Vampire Diaries better than Twilight. Like I was
Vampire
a
Diaries is good.
huge fan of Vampire Diaries.
Is Vampire
And-
Diaries the one that's tied to the originals?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Which it's before the originals. Ha! It's the original to the originals. But I like Team Klaus all the way. But I definitely like as a vampire lover, I call myself a vampire all the time. I love vampires, and we have been missing any kind of vampire content. I feel like it had its moment, and then everybody was like, ew, vampires, like that's so ugh. And so I am excited about vampires, but just like you guys brought up with Harry Potter, we don't need the exact same story. We need something new. Like Renesmee, I think that's the daughter, right? Like, let's see her journey past this or something else. Like, shoot, even give me something about like what happens with the wolf pack and like what they're up to. Just something, anything. Just don't stop making the same thing. Oh, I'm so annoyed.
Yeah, the comments are saying at least, you know, people are saying at least with Rings of Power, they did jump to something else.
Yes,
Agreed.
I love that.
For better or for worse, they jumped to something else, and now we're exploring something else. And I agree. I hope that more of these will take and move these franchises into a new way that just spark people. Because I mean, I'm not against reboots and remakes. We've gotten great things from them before, but it's just a time like it's getting condensed and more condensed and more condensed.
That's true.
It's like
I agree with that.
If we can't think of something in 3 years, let's do another reboot of this thing. And it's like, okay, we're getting a little nuts.
When did the last Twilight come out? When did
it was like
I don't
early?
even know.
Yeah, it was like early 2000s.
Because it actually has been a
2010s.
minute, I think, for Twilight, comparatively to like some other franchises. When it's like
It's 2012 was the last one.
okay, that's not.
I
terrible.
love what Damon says.
Evil Dead Rise today, which is like, I mean, the last time we got one of those films was exactly 10 years ago.
Yeah, so
I don't know. I guess time's just moving faster.
That's
and I'm
the
just
new
getting older.
benchmark, right?
All right.
Damon in the chat says what Janelle's trying to say is bring on Blade. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
I mean,
true.
Bring
no, I
on
mean, they got Mia
Blade.
Goth and Blade. We didn't talk about that, but they got Mia Goth and Blade. Like, yeah, I'm that movie's getting more interesting by the minute. So yeah. So
What I'm getting out of this is 80s and 90s nostalgia is over and early 2000s nostalgia.
yeah, we're getting
is
that
where we're entering now.
Yeah, we're starting to mine that 2000s to the 2010.
God, that
range.
makes me
It's
feel
like,
old.
And with Jamie here, you know, there's a Buffy the Vampire Slayer series coming back.
Oh,
yeah.
Lord.
Oh yeah,
on
they've
now.
supposedly been working on that for like 5 years, and I
Right.
think it keeps getting like backburnered. But it's only a matter. I mean, Disney has those rights now. It's only a matter of time.
It's got to happen now. If we're about to enter a what's the word? Vampirescence. There we go. We're about
I
to-
love that.
For the
We're about
record,
to-
that is not a word.
Buffy's got to be there.
That's not a word.
That's
That's not making
Slayer.
it. All right.
Vampirescence. Say
Hey
it.
man, I'm following Sarah Michelle Gellar. She's living a great life.
She
You know,
is, man.
She can if she wants. She don't have to though. But get a new Buffy. I mean, Buffy did transform me, and that's what got me reading. That was like the first book I really got into. So anyway, we're getting off the topic. Let's move on to the easy topic now, guys. What are we gonna do about this Jonathon Majors Kang situation?
the easy topic.
The easy topic. Who wants to take that? Who wants to just jump into that? You ever heard about this?
Oh,
So-
yeah, Janelle's hiding.
Oh man, yeah. Oh man, it's an awkward time. We hoped just to. I mean, we are not the Marvel podcast, and sometimes we can say thank God about that. We have a Marvel podcast who has to take this stuff on and address this in real time.
To be fair, we've had to deal with Ezra.
Yeah, we got to deal with the
That's
Ezra
true.
situation coming up, but the Jonathon Majors situation, we thought we could just duck out and this would blow over one way or the other, but no, here we are. We're still in this weird middle ground, and this week there were some major changes. Jonathon Majors had these domestic assault kind of charges. He went to jail. He came out. There were conflicting reports. The Disney PR bag money came in. It was swept under the rug. We got quiet for like 3 days there, and we were like, okay, maybe this is over, right? Like maybe it's a couple endorsement losses, but it seems to be settled by both parties. There were statements made kind of like walking some of it back. And now it's just the day, like what happens all the time these days. One incident just sparks a whole flood of things coming out. So we got more accusers coming out. He's being just dropped from talent agencies, PR agencies. He's losing out on film deal, like roles he had left and right. And it's not looking really good. But so far, Disney and Marvel hasn't done anything. And this is a nuts situation because you're talking about an actor who everybody was saying was like one of Hollywood's next biggest stars. And Marvel has locked this guy into a performance role in contract pretty much like unlike any other before. Like, I mean, he was set to show up potentially in like every Marvel project from now until like 2020, six or something like that. And it's just, what the hell do you do about this now? So let's play a fun exercise. You're Kevin Feige and you're Bob Iger and you're sitting here and this is all going downhill. Like, what do you do? Okay. First, kids, Uncle Kofi never likes to scare you too much, but there's more than one wild person under the Marvel, casting banner right now. I mean, FFS, I'm trying to just keep it clean, but FFS, like this whole franchise started by getting back Robert Downey Jr. and being like, let's build on this guy who at that point was like, Hollywood was like, this man cannot be employed for large parts. So it's not like Marvel and certainly not Disney doesn't have experience with handling and navigating these waters. But, we are living in a different time. We are living in a different place. And this controversy isn't going to die down. You're talking about potential, depending on how bad some of this stuff comes out, how great these accusations are, how numerous they are. You're talking about every premiere, every event, every public junket for all of these films that could potentially have Jonathon Majors and Kang in them being kind of lightning rods for, the angries on film Twitter, activists, all kinds of stuff. So glad it's not my situation, but what do you guys think? I mean, is this like Thanos inevitable? Is this recast happening? Or do you think like kind of the Ezra Miller situation, which we've all talked about and speculated about where's the point of no return? Like where you've invested so much that you just kind of, now it's cheaper to keep her and weather through instead of jumping out of here. What do you guys think with this incredibly easy question?
Go ahead, Jamie.
I mean, in my opinion, like, I don't know. I don't think it's inevitable. I think there are two things they can do, which is pull the Ezra Miller playbook, say he's very sorry, he's seeking help, and just don't talk about it anymore. They could do that, but also like Marvel Studios has recast people before. They recast Terrence Howard supposedly over money. They recast Ed Norton over creative differences. To recast them over those things and then not recast him over something like this is not a great look. Right. And I don't necessarily think that, I don't know everything about Robert Downey Jr.'s whole deal, but my understanding is his problems, he was unhireable because he was undependable because he had substance abuse problems. As far as I know, that didn't extend to abusing other people.
Right. As
far as I know, if I'm missing something, feel free to correct me. So I don't necessarily think that that's a comparable situation. But like I said, to recast people previously over purely business reasons, essentially, and not recast him over ethical reasons is not a great look. And honestly, Kang is like the easiest person possible to recast because he, in the comics, he looks entirely different all the time. He has a million different versions. Like, even within the universe, it's not hard to explain, like, somebody bumped a quantum particle and now he looks different or whatever. Or don't explain it at all, just like they didn't explain anything when Don Cheadle and Mark Ruffalo showed up. Like, I don't think it's hard. I don't think it's the quagmire that people think it is. They recast one of the Avengers and everybody was cool with it. So yeah, they've done it before. It's just a matter of somebody's going to crunch numbers and decide whether it's more cost effective to pull the Ezra Miller playbook or to switch him out. That's what it'll come down to, I think.
Yeah. I think Ezra too, in that case, is Ezra had already been, it's to the point where that movie, it's more about the movie than Ezra, right? It's about that movie's so important to everything else and giving them a fresh start and all these things. And I think that's why financially on their side, it still doesn't make sense. It shouldn't, like, it doesn't make sense, to be clear for me. But the fact that they're kind of just putting their head down and putting it out and not saying like, hey, he's done after this, like the fact that they're not saying all that stuff just to get it out in theaters is a different situation to this, because yes, he's been introduced. Yes, he's already been in projects, but we're still very early on because of the plan you talked about. This is a long-term commitment till 2026, all these movies. He's only been in 2 projects right now, right? So, and one was in the very end of a show, and this one was 1 movie, and this movie already kind of got hit, you know, with a lot of bad press and things like that. So of those 2, it would be, I think they could easily go, hey, we're going to recast it. I think the Jamie thing of saying like, just don't acknowledge the cat, like you don't have to explain, like not everything has to be explained, right? Like you don't have to like work yourself into a pretzel to try and go like, he's got a different face now. Like everyone knows why. And the people that don't later on in years will watch a behind the scenes thing and they'll explain why. There'll be a documentary about the MCU. You know what I mean? So like, you don't have to explain it. But if like, these are like the domestic violence is, you know, not something that like, if they were already going to recast based on money alone and based on creative, you have to you have to, it's not even, those are night and day, and not even trying to compare things, but like you have to. And here's the thing, I will also say, if you know, it turns out, because like you've mentioned, there's been some backtracking, there's been some back and forth and stuff. So that whole situation is already muddled unto itself. If there comes out at a point where it's not the case and he's proven innocent and things like that, then you can also deal with that. You know what I mean? Like deal with that problem when you get there. Like not everything, you don't have to solve everything ahead of time. But at this point, it just, I don't see how you don't.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, because I mean, all this is getting so murky. Like, where are we with the Justin Roiland thing, for example? Like that has all gotten so murky. It was like, oh, we were so sure that guy was done. And then like, apparently no.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, man, I don't know. In the end, this segment is just to say, we don't know. We don't know. We can't solve that one, but it's going to be interesting to see like what happens in the next couple weeks. And because we don't know what Marvel's done behind the scenes either.
Right.
And like how much, like, do they have all the computer stuff loaded up for Kang Dynasty, and they've made all those models and they've done all the tech for the duplicates and all that. And exactly like Jamie said, it's that greater than or X than, or greater than or lesser than X versus Y equation on a sheet. I was just rewatching Fight Club, which was one of my favorite scenes, like when he's talking about the car crashes and if they recall or not. And this is basically what this is. So we're going to keep an eye on it, but we're not going to talk about it a lot. You can see Phase Zero every Wednesday on these same channels. Marvel Podcast, they got to unravel this mess. So go Phase Zero. We're going to take a break, but when we get back, we get to talk about fun stuff again, because we're going to talk about the release of Evil Dead Rise, the finale of Star Trek Picard, the big milestone event in Matt's life, Power Rangers Once and Always, plus the new Superman comic this week. So stay tuned to Comic Book Nation. We will be right back. Welcome back to Comic Book Nation, the only show that does it all for geek culture and the official podcast of comicbook.com. If you missed the first half of our show, we talked about the Mandalorian Season 3 finale. We also talked about the new Twilight TV series Matt's murking out for, and we talked about whether or not Marvel has to recast Jonathon Majors as Kang. Those are all great segments. Be sure to go back if you're just joining our live stream now and check it out. For this second half of the show, we lost Janelle Wheeler, who's been under the weather this week, but we want to thank her. She came in and kind of helped us out with those first segments. We really wanted to talk to her about Mando and stuff. But in this second half, it's just me, Matthew Aguilar, and Jamie Lovett, writer and editor at comicbook.com. And we are going to be talking about Star Trek, or first, Evil Dead Rise, Star Trek Picard, Power Rangers Once and Always, kind of milestone reunion event.
So happy.
And new comics this week. So this is our second half of our show. Right off the bat, I'm not going to take too long in this because if you guys want to go back and check out more episodes of Comic Book Nation, which you should absolutely do on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from, we did do an early reaction to Evil Dead Rise last week, but now the movie is out in theaters this week. And I can tell you that I gave Evil Dead Rise 3.5 out of 5 stars. I did the official review for Comic Book Nation. Director Lee Cronin kind of starts and reboots the Evil Dead franchise for a new age with this story about a family living in this kind of rundown LA apartment. There's an earthquake, and that earthquake uncovers an old kind of occult vault. The place used to be a bank, and in a vault they find all these occult holdings, including the Necronomicon, which the Book of the Dead, which of course unleashes Deadites, and now we're in an Evil Dead movie. So this is basically a single setting, a kind of single night horror movie, just like the other ones. But this time it's the top floor, and just the top floor, that's an important note, of an LA apartment building. And the horror centers on a family, a single mother, her 3 kids, and her estranged sister who comes to visit because of a life change of her own. And they just happen to reconnect on this most terrible night where their family is literally and figuratively torn apart by the Deadite possession. So I thought this was a really kind of smart and novel way to both reintroduce Evil Dead in a new kind of concept format, but also honor the franchise that came before. And this movie has all kinds of Easter eggs, from Sam Raimi's stuff to, the remake. And there's even a Bruce Campbell cameo in here that I was writing an article saying, no, there is no Bruce Campbell in this. And then I looked it up. Thank God. I went on Google and was like, wait a minute, let me make sure. And it's like, no, there is totally a Bruce Campbell cameo, just not how you think. It's kind of funny how they snuck him in here. But all that fun horror Easter egg stuff and callbacks that longtime fans will love. But again, a new concept. This is the first urban setting in like the real world urban setting for Evil Dead. And the film has these bookend parts to it that are kind of clunky, but also kind of set up how this franchise can grow from this beginning to a much more exciting and novel use of the entire Evil Dead concept on a much larger scale, or at least allow you to play with variations in the setup and format and how these stories take place, right? Where we are, when it is, or where we are, what's happening when a Deadite possession kind of comes into play. So I think this does a good job of what a reboot should do, which is give the franchise new life, give it some juice, get over just the old, same old stuff, get into something new, still have it feel like it's part of the same franchise, and, maybe even get a new vision. And I think Lee Cronin is going to be a good horror director to come, because he does some smart things to kind of get around budget and to make the most out of the horror in this, from using a peephole for implied horror and stuff like that in the hallway, and, all this other stuff. So yeah, Evil Dead Rise is a lot of fun. It's a crowd pleaser too, like Evil Dead movies should be. There are just moments and stuff in here that are going to make people go with the oohs, ahs, don't go in there. Oh, gnarly gore parts that are going to make people be like, oh, all together and stuff like that. And everything you want from Evil Dead. It's not as campy as Sam Raimi's, but the remake wasn't quite as campy either. I finally did rewatch that on Pluto when I couldn't sleep the other night. That was a bad idea. But yeah, I would still say the remake is probably above this one a little bit for me, because this one's more a little controlled in the budget and the scale. It's a little bit smaller. But still, it makes me want to see more Evil Dead. So, I mean, that's good. Outside of the kind of Ash mythology and all that.
This trailer is disturbing.
Oh yeah, I'm saying there's so many parts of this movie. Like, I mean,
I've been grimacing the entire time Kobe's been talking because like this thing keeps replaying, and it like I had seen the other trailers, but like I had not seen the part where she chews on glass.
oh yeah, there's all that. There's eating, there's eating glass, there's shredding skin, there's deep cutting. Like, yeah, there's all the stuff you don't want to see. There's twisting and impossible bone breaking and like all that stuff, man. So it's Evil Dead. So check it out. Evil Dead Rise in theaters. I mean, I think it's definitely worth a theatrical trip. Like I said, it's a fun crowd film. But if you have to wait for streaming, like it's not going to kill you either. All right. So that's Evil Dead Rise. Let's talk about something fun. Jamie's here for one main reason, because we are again, I don't know what's going on in Geekdom, but we work at comicbook.com, but we're like the only two holding it down for Star Trek over here. So Star Trek Picard. I've been wanting to get into this deeper all season, but people have been asking, but we can only dedicate so much time. But now we've reached the series finale of Picard. And man, what a season this was. Like Star Trek Picard, and I've been having this argument all up and down, is not necessarily the strongest of the new Star Trek TV universe. A lot of people single it out as the one to hate on the most in some ways because of the big switch. And admittedly, it was big. And I remember the first season, and people really jarred by how they took Picard, who came from the Next Generation, and which was this kind of staple of a show for kind of hopefulness and all this stuff. And Picard season 1 is dark. Everybody's on drugs. Everybody's broken, like running around just as murking people as a ranger. And like people got problems and emotional problems, and it's Last Jedi, right? Like our heroes did not turn out so well. And there's a lot of dark stuff in that one about the legacy of what happened in these movies and the show. And so people were really thrown by that. And I think Picard season 3, if nothing else, makes you know that season 2 was kind of trash. Like, let's be honest. Like season 2, they tried to get over COVID. They were like, let's just hang out in LA. We're going to be shooting season 3, which is what we really want to do real soon. So let's just knock out season 2. And it feels now like season 2 was just like a quick knockout. But this, I mean, if this show had to exist just to get to this event and this season, I'm all for it because it was worth it. Like bringing back Terry Matalas, like what he did, just kind of putting together this show and bringing back the Next Generation actors, finding new exciting characters to kind of join the franchise. This was like a perfect balance of old stuff, even deep cut old stuff, and new exciting twists, reveals, and doors getting open to the future of the franchise. That, I'm not afraid to say. I mean, I got like emotional and I teared up, more than once during this season at some key scenes or key conversations or just iconography of seeing certain things. And it was really enjoyable. And I can't say enough good stuff about Star Trek Picard. But like Janelle was kind of asking, it's not the most accessible. This is a reward for longtime fans of not just Next Generation, but like all of 90s Star Trek. Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager towards the tail end of that. Like if you watch those shows, there's so much payoff in this season. And it's just exciting. Like each episode is it's a 10-part movie. As a whole movie, it's really exciting. And episodically, it was really good for conversation week to week, surprises, twists, interesting developments, stuff like that. And one of the most, I think, overall, one of the most kind of flawless seasons of TV Star Trek's put together, like overall. So that's just me. Jamie's much more of an expert in Star Trek than I am. What did you think of Picard season 3?
I think everything you said is true. I think the first 2 seasons of Picard, they tried to, do something different, which I think is admirable. They tried to do like a prestige drama thing. And some things worked in it, some things didn't. But I think this season is what they finally gave people what they wanted. They wanted to see Picard with these characters again, because Picard's a great character, but characters on television are often defined by the other characters around them. And him without the rest of that crew felt very different. And like you said, fans didn't know how to feel about that. But this season really does feel like you get villains returning from Deep Space Nine, you get characters from Voyager showing up. It feels like a great big love letter to that whole golden age of Star Trek, where there were 3 different Star Trek series going, and all this stuff, the stuff that even I'd say even more than the original series really defines what people think of as Star Trek. And as much as it is a big payoff for people who have been fans of, fans of that era, I can see someone like the performances are so good. The characters are so good. The characters from TNG get to do so much that they couldn't do in TNG because they were often burdened with technobabble and whatnot. That I think just the interactions between them are enough that someone who's not, super indoctrinated into Star Trek could watch this season and still really, really enjoy it. And all the stuff that comes out about, changelings and Tuvok and all that stuff might inspire them to go back and check out that older stuff. I think you could start here and then go back and fill in the gaps in your knowledge.
I want to see Voyager, and I definitely want to go back and watch some pretty select stuff. I found myself now drifting to the Next Generation channel on Pluto at night and just like rewatch. And I even saw like one where Data met his quote unquote mom and the other night. And I was like, oh, this is so good and like so relevant right now. Like it's funny to see this now, like compared to that whole arc of the subplot of the season and stuff. So like, yeah, it's made me want to go back and really watch Next Generation and some Voyager stuff again. And I think you're right about that.
Yeah. And I think, I did an interview with Terry Matalas, and he talked about how this season wasn't Star Trek The Next Generation season 8. It was Star Trek 11. This one was meant to be the big movie that celebrates everything that's come before. But then at the end of the episode, he definitely sets up something that could carry on the vibe and the themes and the spirit of Next Generation with, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen the episode, but there's a new status quo there that could definitely be expanded into a new show. He said he's not developing anything right now, but he's made it clear that he would like to. And, Alex Kurtzman has made it clear that he wants to be the bird's eye view producer of things. He wants to draw comparison to Star Wars. He wants to be the Kathleen Kennedy of Star Trek. I think if they wanted, they could bring Terry Matalas in and he could fill that Dave Filoni role where he is the guy on the ground. He clearly has the love, a love of Star Trek and all its nuances and lore that rivals Filoni's feelings about Star Wars that he could bring to, Star Trek Legacy or whatever spinoff or successor series.
It has to be Star Trek Legacy, by the way. That's what it has to be called. Like, if you don't call it Star Trek, like we already have it trending. Like, if you're not doing that, you're just blowing the bag right there. But Hollywood hates money sometimes, because that show would be. I mean, that's what it would be. It would be carrying the legacy of these older shows into this new chapter. That's kind of awesome already. So yeah, I agree with you. I think Terry Matalas, has to be down there on the ground, kind of being the Filoni and helping to pull all these things together to make sure that even though they're varied, they're still kind of in step with lore and all that. Because, already, it's gotten so kind of wonky that like we were doing the thing about Strange New Worlds, had a new trailer out this week, and now like there's the Klingon debate within the Star Trek TV universe about what Klingons are we going with? Are we going with the demons from Discovery season 1? Are we going back to the classic? How does this all make sense in canon that they're both floating around? And it's just like, we need somebody to have that consistent hand on the wheel and be like, yeah, maybe not change the Klingon so much. Like, we could do different things with their culture, but like, let's maybe keep the design thing. And we need that person's hand on the wheel. So yeah, all we got to do is, we're stomping for Team Paramount here. We are kind of owned by Paramount, but even so, like, just go and watch that. Like, if you're not doing anything else and you have Paramount Plus, start Star Trek Picard. It's a great time. And that last finale episode was worthy of an IMAX theater, I would say. There were some just fantastic sequences in this one. So
now that Mandalorian is done, I think I will, because that's my one tether to Star Trek is the Next Generation. That's my favorite.
Oh, and you're gonna love this one.
Anybody will be a delight for you. Yeah.
Anybody who watched even just episodically here and there, Next Generation, and is familiar with any of these characters, like Jamie said, the performances are what is so good. And I think they figured that out this season. Like, instead of trying to make Patrick Stewart do big action scenes, he does like no action in this. They're just like, hey, take a chill, come into this room, talk to this other person, and it's gonna be great. And it was great because the conversations and the level of character work they're bringing up and the level of history they have and stuff. They're just some tense back and forth between all of them. And it's like they're friends, but they got tensions to work out and stuff. And all that stuff was great.
Yeah, and to be clear, you can watch Star Trek Picard season 3 independent of the other 2 seasons. Yeah. Each season of the show had a different showrunner, and they kind of stand alone as their own things. In fact, there are parts of Star Trek Picard season 3 that are less confusing if you just don't watch season 2.
Yeah.
Season 2 makes some stuff more confusing. So I would just like go to season 3.
All of season 2 is confusing by the end.
Also, but before we switch topics, I want to mention, like, if you want more stuff like Star Trek Picard season 3, don't sleep on the IDW Star Trek comics that are coming out right now. In October, they launched a new flagship series, and another spinoff called Star Trek Defiant just launched. Like Picard season 3, it has characters from all of those Golden Age series. It's set between Voyager and Star Trek Nemesis. And they're treating it like the Star Wars comics over at Marvel, where it's treated like it's part of canon. So if you want something similar to what Picard was doing, go check out those comics. They're very good, and I think people will enjoy them.
All right, and that's your Star Trek update from Jamie Levitt and myself. Levitt? What did I say, Levitt?
I don't know, but I was just gonna roll with it. I was gonna roll with it.
My brain is falling apart. I'm seriously falling apart. Anyway, yeah, Jamie Levitt is with us, and yes, he go get all our good Star Trek stuff on Comic Book Star Trek, where we are holding down. My brain is just my brain is broken because we've been the only ones covering Star Trek for days, and like that's all I know is like weird names, episode references, year references, 2401 to 2365, and all this stuff. So I got to detox and get my brain clean. All right, moving right along. That was nothing about nothing. Matt,
random.
This is your time. Also, go check out the Strange New World Season 2 trailer. That's coming back in June, on June 15th, I believe, and already looks like a great time for that classic Star Trek feel. So, Strange New World's coming back. Check that out. Trailers on comicbook.com.
When is that? Well. When does that series come out? The season 2.
June 15th.
June 15th.
Okay. I could get the
Season
first one done, right?
Yeah.
It's only like 10 episodes. And it's good. It's real good.
That show has been recommended to me. I don't know how many times.
Your Star Trek
and I just need to do
by
it.
Far.
All right, here you go. I'm making
a whole Renaissance
proclamation
now.
Like, by premiere day of season 2, I will have season 1 all done, and I will be fully in on that. All right, so there you go. All right, there we go.
All right, now you get to mark out about.
I get to talk Power Rangers. Well, what's up, Billy and Rita? Right on the little side there. Yeah, my little buddies. I am very excited. It is the 30th anniversary of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which makes me feel incredibly old. I'm not gonna lie. So we have once and always a kind of unto itself hour-long special where it's parts of the original cast coming back. The voice of Rita Repulsa, Barbara Goodson is back. Obviously, David Yost, Walter Jones, and then it's in the modern day. Essentially, they don't really go kind of past the thing like you see some of their residences and stuff. But the biggest thing here is that, like you were talking about, kind of with Picard, as far as like trying to bring together some things from the overall franchise and then also be able to do things that you obviously couldn't do in a 90s kid show. This very much feels it's like the perfect balance between it's got that vintage Power Ranger feel, like that literally that scene happens within like 30 seconds of the special opening when they're all running and all the big explosions happening. Like there's so much of that nostalgia for longtime fans. They're obviously in like iconic locations, but then like people are like stabbing people, like they're like people actually take out like putties explode when they like are destroyed, and not like in the like, oh, that's clearly like happening and like stuff happens off screen, but like you'll see pieces of putty like flying past the camera when they're destroyed. Someone gets actually stabbed with the power sword. Blasters, it's not like stormtroopers anymore, right, where the Rangers would always pull their blasters and then hit no one. Like someone actually explodes from a blaster. So like things like that, it's kind of interesting to see the iconic characters and designs and stuff paired against a more mature background. There's also a big story that blends reality, right? Twee, who used to play Trini in the original series, passed away in 2001. And so that has never really been addressed in the series because the character has always just, kind of been doing other things, right? They never really address it. And so here, the main plot line deals with the character's death and her daughter. And Charlie Kirsch plays Min, who's Trini's daughter. And it's a story of her learning. And there's some very, adult conversations like, how do we fill her in on stuff? And how do we tell her that, number one, like her mother's gone, but also that like all the history that comes with it. And there's a story of legacy. And so things obviously do set up to where opening some doors for that character and maybe moving forward. But like the biggest thing is that, like, you know, it's in the trailer, so I'm not spoiling too much of anything, but like Rita, you know, kills Trini. Like it's that bit stuff. Like death has been dealt with in the franchise before, but it's rare. It's sparingly done. And so when it does happen, it matters. And here it's very much that. And also some of the revelations with like how that whole thing kind of came about is interesting. Like they actually do some interesting stuff with Billy. So like it's the perfect pairing between the camp and nostalgia that is just intrinsic to Power Rangers and some mature modern sparks. And so for an hour, I actually had the chance to like watch this. I watched this with Anissa and with Ember. Like we all watched it together, right? And I actually offered Ember, I was like, you don't have to watch this. Like Daddy has to watch this. You don't have to watch this. Like, I can set you up on your tablet or something. And she was like, no, Power Rangers, right? I want to watch. And so she watched the whole thing. This is a 3.5-year-old. Watched the whole thing, all the colors, all that stuff, right? And by the end is like walking around with a morpher. There is a really cool, it's a love letter to Power Rangers fans, longtime fans especially. There is a tribute, obviously, at the end to Jason David Frank, who, you know, passed away after this had been filmed. Everything was done for this. He had opted not to do it. So like he is referenced in here. There are references to his the character's family and things. So they do a nice job at the end. It's hard not to get emotional at the end of this and how they pair it. And I thought they did it really well, especially for having to do it after the fact, right? It's already done. So you should go check this out. If you are a fan of the franchise, you should absolutely go watch this. My only quibble with things is really just there's some difficult conversations that happen. And sometimes the dialogue or the acting doesn't quite get to where it needs to for that moment to really land like it should. Like there's some memes going around of like particular moments of conversations and you're like, oh, that could have been smoother. That could have maybe been handled with a little bit more nuance and things, you know. So there is some of that. But overall, I just adored it. So definitely go check it out. You can find my review of it on comicbook.com. And also our very own Nick Valdez had the chance to sit down with David Yost and Walter Jones. And so hopefully that will be hitting our YouTube page very, very soon, hopefully in the next week or so. So got to ask them all about it, talk about stuff. So definitely check that out. So yeah.
All right. Thank you, Matt. That is Power Rangers Once and Always, and you can check that out on Netflix. All right, to wrap it up today, we only have one thing left to do. That's a comic book, and we are talking about Superman #3.
Woohoo! This series is just this is gorgeous. You actually called it a show earlier, but I think that's so apt because this series more than anything like feels like an episode. Like it feels like an episode of a series.
Yeah,
and especially with the like odes to the animated series that, you know, is in the art style and all that. This very much feels like a cartoon given life in a book. And it's just there's always these kind of surprises. I love that here the parasite problem has gone so far as to, you know, corrupt Superman, but even in like barely functioning jaw half gone mode or whatever, he's still Superman. And so I just love that the personality comes through even as he's like purple and like half walking. He's like, Luthor, like you have to treat Livewire well. You can't hurt her. Like he's still ushering like commands like that, but they're all stuttered and zombie like. And so this is very much a spectacle. I love that they brought Livewire back in, and her role in this is great. She's hilarious. And so when Joshua told us that she would be coming back, but in a different way, I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is cool. So I'm really excited about the character. And I can't tell you the last time I was like super excited about some of the Superman supporting villain characters. And this series has done such a great job. So that's me.
We did like I referenced earlier, our interview with Joshua Williamson and Jamal Campbell. And they said like there's a lot of influence from Superman, the animated series, the 90s one in this comic. And you can see it not overly so, but in the way that it's staged, the way that it plays, almost like each issue is an episode of that show. And they do a great job of just framing it in that kind of cinematic cartoon way. And just from the panels and the artwork and the way it plays. I mean, like I said, it plays like an episode of a cartoon, from each of the subplots and all that to how it ultimately plays out. And I I've loved this first 3-issue arc that they've done, and they've done a good job. They've given us, like you said, spectacle on a comic book level. They've nailed these characters down that like Superman is very much Superman, and we know him to be, and they take they're not shying away. They're not like being like, oh, we got to make Superman dark and gritty. It's like, no, this is like, cereal box Superman to the nth degree, but we just know how to apply that and how to make that interesting and why he's interesting for that reason. That, like you said, he's using this trap for the parasites, using one of his other enemies, but he looks at Luthor and is like, don't you hurt her now. Like, I'm going to go, but you treat her nice when I get back. And it's like, all that stuff. And he's like, I think he says, doesn't Luthor say something like, oh, I've thought about like feeding her, like, her or something. He's like, well, I think we could get around that. But in that whole dynamic between Superman and Luthor, who have been partnered up before in the comics many times, but having this whole thing with Luthor combining his corporate, resources to Superman, and this 3 arc convincing him that like, you should use this, you should use me. And then him just like, my favorite part of the whole arc is when they win and him just declaring, that's our first victory as Supercorp. And it's like, Superman's still kind of like, this is not a thing. And he's like, yeah, no, it's a thing.
Yeah,
like,
we're doing this. Yeah.
And
he has a full-on action figure suit in this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's just kind of like, that whole concept is very interesting. And I'm liking this book a lot. And so I'm excited. And we have an intriguing larger story about this Dr. Pharma and like whatever this group is that's trying to get at Lex and for what reason and what they're doing to kind of enhance and transform Superman's villains is interesting stuff. So I'm digging it a lot.
Yeah.
Jamie,
have you checked this out?
I did. I decided to try and, I'd fallen off the DC universe for a while. I decided to check in with these Dawn of DC books, and yeah, I've been enjoying this. I didn't know about the Superman the Animated Series influence until you mentioned it, but you can really see it specifically in how Lex and Superman interact. Like that square jaw, I am not taking any of your nonsense from Superman, paired with that absolute calm smugness from Lex Luthor whenever they're in conversation, is absolutely straight out of the animated series. And it's a perfect, that relationship is really what's buoying this story and making it more than just another Parasite story. And they're doing a really good job of it. Not to mention, Jamal Campbell's art is just fantastic. It somehow is both looks painted, but also has like the exaggerated dynamism of like a much looser style. Yeah. And like seeing that paired together, that's a rare fusion, and he does it remarkably well. It's just a gorgeous book. So yeah, I've been checked out of Superman for a long time, but I'm reading this and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, and the lettering in this series, but the way it's always worked into, like, I've rarely seen lettering this like impactful from actions, like the way it's woven into a cape, or it's woven into like it, and it just follows the arch, and it's so colorful, and but it never jars you too much. Like, it fits in with everything else going around it. And there's some big scenes happening here. Also, the tease of oh my god, is it Moonlight? Oh my god, I forget her name.
I forget your name too.
But it's the new character showed up in 2, and I'm so jazzed that we're kind of moving that direction, because I have no idea what that character is.
Yeah, that's gonna get weird, and I'm ready for this book to get weird in any number. It can get supernatural weird, it can get sci-fi weird, and it seems like it all fit, because this is, like Jamie's saying, they achieve that still like comic booky in the best way kind of feel that anything could happen, and we can go with it. So check out the Superman series if you aren't. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Comic Book Nation. We are on all your major platforms for podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all that stuff. You can also and should subscribe to our YouTube page, because we drop content on there every week. There's so much we cover at Comic Book, and there's so many things that, people are like, I would love to do this thing. We're like, bring it to our YouTube page. So interviews, kind of gameplay stuff, new trailers, kind of discussions. It's all on our YouTube page. Go check it out, Comic Book Nation on YouTube. And you can also watch our live shows there every week and comment there. And we love growing that community, as well as our Twitch community. Love all you guys for hopping in. If you want to follow us individually, you can find me at Kofi Outlaw.
You can find me at Matt Aguilar CB.
You can find me at Jamie Lovett.
And I think that's it. Go on Apple Podcasts and give us 5 stars. For some reason, I mean, we're 5 years in now. It doesn't matter, but do it anyway.
Yeah,
They haven't shut us down yet, so I think we've made it a half decade. But We'll see you guys next week. This is Comic Book Nation, and I think by this time next week, some of us will have seen Guardians of the Galaxy. Because summer's coming real quick. So stay frosty for that, my friends, and I will see you out there. Peace.
This is